Hello.
This is Bad Marriages in the Bible, and we are your hosts. I'm Sean.
I'm Kate.
And we are the founders and operators, or whatever you want to call us, of Dandelion
Smooth
Ministries.
operators.
That's right. Dandelion Ministries, where we create space for you to experience and to know the grace of Jesus Christ in your place of need, where you actually need to know that there is a God who loves you and has died for you and saves you from your sin. And we love to do that through creative means. We love to use our gifts in art and music to get around our defenses and everybody else's defenses out there, which we all are so good at maintaining. We love to use our reason and kind of basically bury our needs way down deep so that no one will ever have to see them ever. And but then we find ourselves watching a movie or listening to a Taylor Swift song and sobbing our eyes out. And we're wondering why. And so we love to use art to actually go to those places and to proclaim God's grace for you there.
And in fact, he gave us art in order as a gift, so that what's deep inside of us could come out, and what the truth is outside of us could come in. And it's a common grace that whether you know it's from God, the Father of Jesus Christ, or not, people are receiving and being blessed by creating art, by appreciating it, because it gets to that deep place in your soul, and you have a cathartic moment where you realize or you encounter something that you have an aha moment, and it helps you. So it's really a gift to all of us. And through the Bible, he speaks in artistic ways, through poetry and song, especially in this Song of Solomon, through architecture, through storytelling, through drama. All of that is in the Bible. So he is speaking to us in creative ways through the scriptures all the time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we've been, as Kate said, been going through Song of Solomon together because we got up to Solomon, King Solomon, in the narrative of redemptive history in the Bible. And so we thought it was a good time to look at this book that is accredited to him, that also is a very positive view of marriage and love and sex, since most of the examples we get in the Bible are negative ones, or at least just real human ones where there's brokenness and we need grace and salvation in them. And this whole book is also in that context of grace, of God's grace, but it's showing us what a gift intimacy, physical intimacy is, and marriage itself is. And so we've been walking our way through Song of Solomon, and we have finally come to the end. We have reached chapter 8, verses 8 through 14. And we are going to spend our episode today unpacking those for you, because they are just like most of this book. There's these little strange curveballs. You're like, what in the heck does that mean? So we're back into that spot. And there's a couple different views of this section of the book. As we've been going through this whole thing, we've heard that there are varying views of it because we're dealing with poetry. We're dealing with something that is imprecise in a way.
And also an ancient text with rare words, or words that occur for the first time in this final few verses of this song. So they're always trying to find the true interpretation that was intended.
Right.
Yeah.
And when I say imprecise, I just mean in the sense it wasn't like, this was when Solomon did this in, whatever year BC kind of thing, and he was talking to this girl and this and that and the other. It's actually poetic imagery and all of that, which can be very direct, as we've just said. It can hit home in a way that an historical record will not. And so it definitely still cuts right to where it needs to cut. And that is how the Lord moves through his word. And so, but in terms of just trying to figure out exactly what's going on, it takes a little more effort and scholarship sometimes, but it evokes still. That's the interesting thing about
Makes
art.
you feel.
Yeah. It still can you can still kind of get what it's saying without fully understand what it's saying.
Mm-hmm.
So, on that note, a couple of the different views are that, one, this is just kind of like an appendix to the book, that it actually, the song itself ends at 8:7, which is where we ended our last episode. And then there's also another view that says this is kind of a bookend to the book, where it started with kind of in a family context, and it's bringing us back into another family context, referencing her brothers here at the end. So
we'll go with the second one.
We'll go with the second
that there's a cohesive whole and a cohesive structure to the book, even though it can be read as individual poems put together, but they do have a structure that works beautifully together. In this one, the bride is surrounded once again by her brothers. At the beginning, she talked about her brothers who made her work in the vineyards.
Yeah, they were harsh with her. They were like not nice.
And now they're speaking about her and saying that they were committed to keeping her ready for marriage, and they wanted to protect her virginity.
Right, protecting her virginity. So send her on the fields to work.
Right?
Nobody wants to be out there with that person.
We were harsh with you because we were protecting your virginity.
It's for the best. You just got to trust me. I'm doing this for your own good. It's like all those terrible abusive cliches that people use when they're mistreating you.
Yes.
But
still, so all of that
that's what they say it was about.
The best of times, the worst of times. They were, and they say if she was kind of chaste, if she was a walled garden, not fast and loose, then we would protect her. And if she was fast and loose, we would try to hem her in and be a door to her. And then you hear her saying, I was a walled garden. My breasts were like towers, like nobody could reach them. I was a virgin. She is proud of it. And so,
and then also that imagery, there's some very practical bits there where the brothers are like, she had no breasts, so she was too young, so they're protecting her. And then when she says my breasts were like towers, it's got a double entendre. She's like, they were impenetrable, but then they also got big. And so she's saying, like, when that happened, I was still a wall, right? So like I came of age, I was still a wall.
And I still remained a virgin, saving myself. Like she kept adjuring those daughters of Jerusalem throughout the book. Wait until the time is right. Wait until you're married, and then let it loose in sexual bliss. And so here, as they end the book, she's saying, I waited. I waited.
Yeah. And one might say that there's a bit of a double standard here, would they, Kate?
Yes, that's what I was saying.
So a little softball pitch for you.
How does this hit you? The book is ending as praising her for her virginity. She's boasting in it. I was the ideal bride for my husband. And so I was like, this is so focused on her. Meanwhile, Solomon is the most notorious polygamist, of the Old Testament.
At least the one that's written about directly, yeah. I'm sure there were others in the surrounding countries.
Yeah,
but he definitely went
definitely
for it.
not chaste when he was not saving himself for anybody.
Yeah. He outdid everybody.
And so Sean very diplomatically was like, well, this is talking about her and her family. I'm sure they would have loved it if Solomon also had been saving himself for her. That would probably be nice, but they weren't in charge of him.
I was thinking, I have 5 sisters, so I was thinking as a brother, it's like, it's kind of one of those things. It's like, well, what do you have any power over here? Like, what do you have control over? I would be very concerned for her, and I would be upset that she was with some guy who had 700 wives. Yeah. But I don't have any power over that. So that's what I meant when I said that offline.
That's right.
But yeah, it's a double standard because there's no concern in the book anyway for Solomon's virginity.
Right. And so the reason why this is important is that it sets the book firmly in a historical context. And that's where God always comes. He gets into history. He gets into a particular time in our lives. He gets on the earth with real people, and works his forgiveness and his grace and his promise with real people. So at this cultural time, it was very expected for the girl to be a virgin, and it would be great, but less concern was paid for the man. And so you see the cultural context, and the book is nodding its hat to or tipping its hat, nodding its head to the cultural context.
We understood.
And saying this exists in history, and God has come into a real marriage in history when this was what was happening. And in light of that, this is very countercultural because, like we've been saying all along, this is really the bride's book. And she's the one that is expressing her love for the groom, and she is the one pursuing him often, and especially in marriage, she is the one initiating. And it's a hymn about mutual love. So even though it's set in a context where the man has all the power, the woman has none, the expectations for virginity are only on the woman, none are on the man. In marriage, what the Holy Spirit does is that they are mutually pursuing each other, supporting each other, affirming each other, forgiving each other, being vulnerable with each other. It is a mutual, reciprocal kind of love, not a one way, not as you serve me, I own you. None of that happens in this book. And if anything, you hear more from the bride's point of view, which is a nice counterbalance to the culture that it's set in.
Yes, that is all true. Very well put. And the other aspect, too, in this is that this is also God's desire for us when we come into marriage as well. The idea of preserving ourselves, being chaste, all of that, so that we're actually giving ourselves to one other person. We've talked about that in the previous
So she's held up
episodes.
as a model. Like the scripture is holding her up as a model for men too.
Yes, a positive model. And that whether or not Solomon was attaining that, it doesn't change still the standard. And that is, that's the realm of the law. That's what that is. And none of us stand up well to it, frankly. When it comes to it, this is in a very physical way. And as we've talked about before on this podcast, Jesus takes this standard of purity and all of that and applies it to our hearts and gets very explicit on that when he teaches in the Sermon on the Mount. And so in light of that, we are all coming into our relationships impure, whether or not we actually had sexual relations with anybody, to quote one of our former presidents. Anyway, he shall remain nameless. But, whether or not we are technically virgins physically or not, our hearts have, we've not been able to keep our hearts pure under the law. And we come into marriage needing grace and needing forgiveness, and we need to heal on some level, regardless of our past.
That's true. So in one sense, we're all like Solomon, coming in undeserving of somebody else to give themselves wholly to us.
Yeah.
That has saved themselves for us. We're all like Solomon coming into that place.
Yeah, because we've all, as Jesus said in Matthew 5, according to the true standard of the law, that it is inside and out, begins with the heart. We are all adulterers. And so we come into marriage, as we've said before on this podcast, we really view marriage as a ministry of reconciliation. And this is how God uses it and works it in our lives and actually brings us into deeper places of intimacy and helps us to walk in vulnerability and to open ourselves up and to be opened up, and to find safety where we may never have thought it existed before, which will allow us to then also experience real love and real value and real forgiveness in those places that we didn't think were possible. And so
right,
that's what I think is also in this whenever we're getting into law language and whenever we're talking about purity, which the
No.
Bible does do quite a bit, and this book does in terms of our physical relationship, but it's also been used very many times. That's some good grammar for all you out there. It's been used so often throughout church history too, as a metaphor for the marriage of us and Jesus. We've talked about that. And, many like to take it and kind of talk about how the bride will be a pure, spotless bride in Revelation and all of that. That we made ourselves ready and that kind of thing. And I think too often that gets turned into some sort of, we have to somehow reach some level or achieve some level of purity or holiness for the Lord to take us to be with him or to come back kind of thing. And it's just, that's not what I see here. I mean, I think when we talk about marriage as a ministry of reconciliation, it's going in eyes open, That's the thing with the Lord. Like he comes in full on, knows exactly what we are and who we are and what we've done and how we are. This is why he's the one doing all the teaching on the law and the New Testament. And he comes and he makes us pure and spotless. He actually restores our purity because of his own. He gives us himself, right? And I think that's something that we experience in marriage too. We experience a redemption, a restoration. Those places that may have been, we may have not been like her. We may not have been walls. We may have been fast and loose with ourselves. And as we've said so many times before, it's not because we're doing that out of wholeness. We're doing that out of our pain.
Yeah.
Like we're trying to fill the hole. We're trying to cope with our lack of value and fear of rejection and all that kind of stuff. And that is something that can be so beautiful in a marriage, is that you actually experience when you get to those places of real vulnerability. You experience what it is to truly be loved and to be valued and to be defended and to have somebody be jealous over in the best way. And that actually begins to change you. It just does. It changes you. You want something better for yourself. I mean, it is Moulin Rouge, right? I mean, this is like one of our favorite movies. When Christian falls in love with Satine and she actually experiences what it means to truly be loved and not just be used as a prostitute, she doesn't want to be a prostitute anymore. She doesn't want to give herself away to the Duke. She wants Christian. And so anyway, that was a very long little monologue there, but I just wanted to talk about that in light of this. It's a double standard for sure in this time period, but it is also just the standard for all of us. And all it does is expose the fact that none of us have met it. And so our marriages, no matter what you got in your past, it is a ministry of reconciliation and healing for you, for all of us. It's going to bring out things that you wish you hadn't done, or you wish, it's just going to bring out stuff that you've got in your life where you haven't been able to maintain purity.
Absolutely. And Solomon actually invites those things from her. He's the one saying them to her in the courtship or in the earlier poems when he's saying, come out of the cleft of the rock. Let me hear your voice. Let me see your face. Your voice is lovely. Your face is sweet. Or come away from those mountains. Come away from the wild animals. Come and be with me. He is calling her away from her insecurities and from her shame and from her distractions and her, emotional ties to her family of origin and all the other things that are entangling her. So he's the one calling her away to come be with him. And she will need to do that for him too. That is what marriage is intended to be, a safe place where you are mutually giving the Lord's forgiveness to each other, and you are sharing honestly, and you are giving your vulnerabilities, and there's no place for secrets. There's no place for hiding. That God is with you, and He's in your marriage, and He's the one bringing us out of hiding, and He's the one bringing us to be able to forgive each other and to walk through that and have the the feeling of being really loved at your worst place and having that give you new desires and a new heart. So you're not stuck in those patterns that were harmful to you and harmful to your spouse, but you want new patterns and you want to be with your spouse and you want to be with a community that can support you in those things. And so he has given that to her in the past, and she will have to give that to him too. And I think it's kind of interesting that in this time of sort of the final close of the book, and she's kind of championing her virginity, and that if we pull back 10,000 feet, that can be Jesus. Like you said, it's not the church's job to make itself pure so that Jesus will come back or the kingdom of heaven will come. But Jesus makes the church pure. He washes his church, men and women alike, husbands and wives alike. He washes them with his blood and makes them pure. And so from a 10,000-foot view of looking at this from a typology point of view and seeing the church as the bride, she is boasting, look what Jesus has done for me. He has washed my sins away and I am pure and, spotless in the Lord, in him. That's what he has done. It's not because of me. So that is the church's boast, both men and women alike included in that. So you can see that in a typological understanding right here. But if we go back to kind of a natural understanding, she has managed to hold on to her physical virginity.
Praise God. But
Solomon is silent here. He's not speaking about that. And I think his silence, and this might be what we call eisegesis, me reading into the text, something that's not there, but he is not able to boast about those things. And so I think his silence is interesting. And then right in the next verse is kind of an obscure verse that Solomon has let out his vineyard to keepers. And, they got some money for it.
They bring money for it.
They bring money for it.
Money, yeah. It made Solomon money, 1,000 shekels of silver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's talking about Solomon making money off of his vineyards, but then she talks about the vineyard as her own body and says, my vineyard is my very own. Like he can't let me out to anybody. My vineyard is my very own, and I want to give all of my vineyard to Solomon. So I'm giving you, Solomon, my husband, all of myself. And so she is very modern for her to say, I'm in charge of my own body. Nobody would be saying that right then, that she was belonged to herself. She would be the possession of her brothers or the possession of her husband now. But she is saying, I own my body and I give it to you. And I want to give it to you. And again, this is in poetic love language. But also kind of hearkening back to the few verses that we spoke about last time. If a man were to offer for love, all the money he had, he would be utterly despised. And that Solomon can't, give her to others, anymore. Like that it just wouldn't work that way. He can't let her out like one of his vineyards. She does not, he doesn't have the right to do that to her. She has the right to own her own vineyard, and she wants to give him all of herself. And so I just find that interesting. He's silent about his virginity, and then it speaks about him in that vineyard could allude to his harem. The hundreds of concubines and wives that he has, or it could refer to a literal vineyard. But she does take that idea back and refer it to her own body, and that she can't be sort of passed around, but she belongs only to him, or wants to give herself only to him.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple different views on that, as Kate just spoke about. Some commentators think it's him referring to his harem and that he was making money off his harem, the implication there. There are others that think, who would do that? Who would give their harem out to somebody else to kind of make money off of? Because that's the implication with these keepers. So there's others that disagree and say that she was just referencing a general practice of the day. This is how you made money off your vineyard. And then she's like, now I'm going to talk about it metaphorically, that it's my vineyard. And that happens throughout the book, both, that idea, because I think that was that one commentator's argument, Estes. He was saying that that would be the first time that was kind of introduced, that this is a vineyard is referring to his harem, because the rest of the book it's referring to either a literal vineyard or her. And so that was kind of one of his arguments. But either way, the thrust of the point is exactly what Kate said. It's just, this is her body that she is giving out, and she's giving all of it to him, and that she has the ability to do that. And if it's in that view of the kind of metaphorical thing, the keepers of the fruit in verse 12, the second half would be referring to her brothers, like basically giving them credit for keeping her pure, because they start the beginning of this section. So either way.
And also a third layer to that was, I was reading a commentary by a person named Carr, and they were referring back to Isaiah 7, where the vineyard was Israel and Israel's idolatry. And so it actually has the same monetary language too, the vines and the shekels and 1,000 shekels. And so that was, the idea of Israel was a vineyard, and now it's filled with briars and thorns because of its idolatry and turning away from the Lord.
Yeah.
And he was going to send his Messiah to call them back,
to restore his bride, right?
And we do know that happened with Solomon's wives, was that they did bring his heart away from the Lord. And so he started worshiping all of their gods. And so in a sense, his vineyard did get corrupted and sold out. And so with that layer, this could be a wife who knows the true God, who knows the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and of his father David. And so she's not like those other people in that vineyard, in that other vineyard. And so I think there could be a layer 2 of that Isaiah 7 idolatry versus I'm someone who knows the Lord.
Yeah. All of these things are possible. You can decide as you read it and think about which one sounds more compelling to you. Doesn't change the overall thrust that she is saying, my vineyard is for you and you alone, not for anybody else. That's how she's concluding before she gets into one last expression. There's one final expression between the two of them of just full desire. And so the book ends that way, with that deep passion, deep longing for each other, where he says, "O you who dwell in the gardens with companions listening for your voice, let me hear it." And that idea of companions in there and everything is, some scholars are saying that really is showing that a healthy marriage, a vibrant marriage, is a blessing to all those around them. It doesn't just it's not just an impact on you and your families of origin, but it actually goes even beyond that to your community. And it's true. We all love being around delightful couples. I mean, right? And so he is calling for her voice. And then she says, "Make haste, my beloved, and be like a gazelle or a young stag on the mountains of spices." And brings us back to that invitation. And it's just showing the passion is still there. If we're thinking about this as later on in their lives, it's, post the wedding and all of that, that there's still deep passion. It hasn't run out, and they still long for each other deeply.
And it's in light of who they are and their struggles.
Yeah. And that is how the book ends. So it ends with him being like a young stag running about on her mountains. So that's nice. But this has been, it's a rich book. It's one of those ones that you, just like a good work of art, that you will never lose the initial meaning where it hit you the first time when you were like, I really love that. whatever it may be,
Mm-hmm.
that painting or that song. But then as you continue to listen to it, or you continue to look at it, or just like any poem, you continue to read it, it's going to take on deeper meanings, and it's going to capture you in new ways. And that's the way the Bible always is, because it's a living word. It always pulls you into deeper and new places. And so we encourage you to read it and continue to digest all the beautiful imagery that is in it, and how it is really holding up to you a promise to all of us. I mean, both for our actual marriage, our marriages, and also for the Lord's love for us. That this book really, we've been kind of walking with those two realities in view the whole time. And it is giving us a promise of real reconciliation, real depth of intimacy and safety in a marriage, and physical joy.
Mm-hmm. What, one of the most helpful things too that this book does is it puts in your mouth deep affirmations, both sexually, emotionally, physically, relationally, deep affirmations for you to share with your spouse, and also for you to hear from God through Jesus and the Holy Spirit to you, right in your place of hiding or of shame. And I'm looking at one of my favorites here that we just talked about. But I would just be curious, what are like one or two of your favorite takeaways from this book as affirmations that you kind of are go-tos? One of the ones here is, then I was in his eyes. This is after she's talking about, my breasts were like towers. They grew and no one touched them. But then the other side of that verse, and you always have this natural and also supernatural going together. She says, then I was in his eyes as one who finds peace. And just being really appreciated and seen and known by the other, by the Lord, and also by the one you love. I think that's just a beautiful phrase.
It is. It is. I mean,
you have captivated my heart. That's another one.
Yeah, I love that one. I mean, I love my favorite section of this, is the one where the winter is over and the springtime has come, come my beloved, and time of singing is here, and all of that. Like, that's really one of my favorites. The kind of the invitation and the wooing, and that's really what it is. I remember when we got married, I was just like, yes, like this is finally happening. So that's the way it felt to me, and still does. The other ones, I mean, they're all good. I have to kind of put them through filters. It's like you're like the flocks of Gilead, and your teeth.
The one I always
twins
think
and
about
all of that
too was come out of the clefts of the rock.
Yes,
I felt like you helped me with that a great deal, and the Lord used you powerfully for me to do that.
Yeah.
So
and for me as well. I mean, that's what marriage does, and it is a completely crazy thing, and it is a very unique thing as a relationship, and it also just takes you to places you wouldn't otherwise have gone. So, without a doubt.
So, thumb through it again and find some of your favorite affirmations and just sort of chew on them, because this book is meant to be spoken to the person that you love, and it's meant for that person to speak that to you, and also for you to hear that from the Lord.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks, everybody. Well, as always, we've got things in our show notes for you. Our website, dandelionministries.org. There's a way for you to support the show, and there's an email address where you can send us your questions and or prayer needs. And we would love for you to review the show, tell your friends and family about it, and whoever, just recommend it to people. And we just really appreciate you listening. And we're going to jump back into the overall narrative of Scripture next time. But we've really enjoyed this little, not detour, but kind of side road of Song of Solomon. And we hope you have too. So we'll talk to you next time.
This garden.
Beautiful garden. That's a good one. That's one of my favorite. You are a beautiful garden to me. Always.
Thank you.
All right. Well, blessings, everyone. And we'll talk to you next time.
Okay. Bye-bye.